Pre-season is finished and we are less than 1 week away from Arsenal's first Premier League game at Old Trafford. For that reason, I'm going to be taking you through all of my predictions for the upcoming season, talking about signing of the season, flop of the season, top goal scorer, and everything in between. This is Arsenal Unfiltered. Let's get started. Yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark, wherever you are in the world. I really do hope you are well, and more than anything, I hope you're excited for the Premier League season, and the Premier League season coming back this Sunday. I mean, it's just great news, isn't it? It's been a long old summer. I have certainly found it difficult. First year doing a podcast over the summer, so thank you so much for anyone who's listened regularly over the summer. It really does mean the world to get that continued support, even though there aren't many football matches going, and the football matches that are on don't really mean too much in the grand scheme of things, but we are back to the real stuff from Sunday. Because of that, I'm going to be talking through the 25-26 season predictions. I'm going to do best new signing, breakout player, top goal scorer, before doing flop of the year, unexpected success, and player of the year. I just like doing these kind of award kind of vibes. They make predictions simple and easy. Before we get into any of that though, I have to mention, obviously, we did have a really good performance against Athletic Club. I think Athletic Club had 2 shots. We really contained them, but more importantly, we looked flowing and effective going forward. I wasn't able to watch the game live. I have been in luckily for me, I've been in Lake Como, so near Cesc Fabregas's new jaunt, and obviously where he's doing amazing work over there. So I wasn't able to watch the game live, but I've caught up with it since. I thought Kai Havertz's goal was fantastic. I thought Victor Gyökeres looked good. I was so glad to see what looked like a starting 11 for Sunday. There could be a change or two. Maybe we see Miles Lewis-Skelly play at left back. Maybe the fitness race between Ben White and Timber is won by Ben White, just because he is that bit further along and has played that bit more in pre-season. So, I think there could be changes at fullback. I think that's the midfield we'll see. I think that's the front 3 we'll see at Old Trafford. So really exciting to see that. Exciting to see Gabriel back as well. Obviously his first minute since the behind closed door friendly, where I think he got 45 and then picked up a knock. So very good that he is back and ready for us. And I don't think it's any surprise that we looked better defensively when you bring Timber and Gabriel back in. So a really positive day, some free-flowing, direct, fast and incisive football to score those goals. And Martin Zubimendi as well, we've got to talk about him. He is a class above. So really positive end to pre-season. I really enjoyed catching up with it, consuming content about that game. It feels like suddenly the vibe has just changed, hasn't it? Now we're all ready and excited for Old Trafford, whereas before it felt like we all had a little bit of worry about how it would go and what would happen, and they are obviously not in a good place, but they are also kind of like that age-old worry, I think, that Arsenal fans will always have about Manchester United and the narrative and going away to Old Trafford. So it's good to get a positive result under our belt before we go into that game. Let's get into the main body of the episode then. Before I do, if you've enjoyed this episode or any episode of Arsenal Unfiltered previously, please make sure you follow and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts from. It really does help. I'm going to start with predicting who our best new signing will be. So, Let's just recap. We've got Kepa Arrizabalaga, we've got Christian Mosquera, we've got Christian Norgard, Martin Zubimendi, Noni Madueke, and Victor Gyökeres. Hopefully we add an Eze to that. He's obviously just picked up a community shield, so he might try and go out on that high with Palace. And we've seen Steve Parish talk about they don't want Mark Gahey to go for a low figure, so they're going to have to do something there. We've seen Palace have a terrible decision, I have to admit, for them to play in the Conference League as opposed to the Europa League. I think that is awful. And I really do think football needs to look at this multi-club ownership model and all of that rubbish and the paperwork and the administration of UEFA and all of that sort of stuff. So maybe Eze is available, but it's those 6 we will be ranking as of today. I think everyone is excited about Victor Gyökeres, and I'm going to give him commended. I'm not going to give him the winner. I'm not going to predict him as the best new signing, because I think Victor Gyökeres is someone who we're all very, very excited for. We think he will bring goals, but I think everyone can acknowledge there is limitations to his game. We saw some build-up play in the Athletic Club game, but we haven't bought him to be a better build-up player than Kai Havertz. I don't think you buy Victor Gyökeres to do that. In fact, I know you don't buy Victor Gyökeres to do that. You buy a different player, or you just stick with Kai Havertz if that's your intention. We've brought Victor Gyökeres to be direct, to run in behind, to be that typical number 9. So his game is fantastic. I really like what I've seen so far. Really like the directness, the intent of what he's doing. But he is a player designed to do a job. So I think he will do that job very, very well. I kind of wanted to judge this best new signing on, who is going to have the biggest impact. If we win the Premier League next season, who will be the player that we can look at and say, yeah, it was absolutely him that made the difference. So I think players like Kepa, Norgard and Mosquera are out of that conversation immediately. They're kind of backups. Gyökeres, like I said, I think he's got not one dimension to his game, but he's got one job. I think he's going to go and do it, and it will be a really key job. Noni Madueke as well. I think looking at how he's been played, he's come on the left wing a lot and started to play there a lot. I think that is going to be an option Arteta does. I don't think he would be doing that in pre-season if it wasn't a plan, a calculated method. And I think Noni Madueke will play off the left a lot of this season. So look, for me, Noni Madueke, again, similar to Gyökeres, could do a very, very important job, but it's probably one job, and that for that reason, I'm going to give best new signing to Martin Zubimendi, because I just think he is an upgrade in every single department on Thomas Partey. So I think he passes the ball better. I've said in previous pods, I think he'll help us unlock the left side by being a little bit more two-sided, two-footed. I think he moves the ball quicker. He's physically better. Defensively, he seems really, really sharp. A part of his game that I wasn't really aware of until I've watched him in pre-season. He snaps into tackles, really senses danger well. So I'm excited for Martin Zubimendi to play for us this year. And I think you look at the 3 big signings, Gyökeres, Madueke, Zubimendi. Like I say, Gyökeres and Madueke could have a massive impact on us winning the Premier League, changing up how we attack, etc., etc. But the base of everything we do goes through that 6, and the base of everything we do goes through that midfield. The build-up, even the direct play, right, that we're trying to bring in, it won't be, well, it will be sometimes, but the primary people who are orchestrating that more direct play will be Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard and Martin Zubimendi. They will be deciding when we go fast and when we go short and slow it down. So I think Martin Zubimendi, he will conduct that play, and he will be a really, really important kind of cog in our machine. And we need to win the Premier League to be able to change up our attacking pace, to change up our style, and to keep our defensive solidity. So I think because of his all-roundedness, I will give him best new signing. Okay, so I'm going to go next to breakout player. And the thing I've defined breakout player as is not a first-team regular from the previous seasons or predicted for this season, but someone who will make a big, big impact this year. So this isn't necessarily like young player of the year or anything like that. This is a player that I think is not a first-team regular who will have a big impact. Obviously, you hear breakout player, we've watched Max Dowman, you probably think that's the direction, but I just don't think Max will play enough football to have what I'm defining as a big impact. I'm sure he will wow us at times, perhaps in a League Cup game off the bench, or even starting a League Cup game. You just never know, depending on the draw and the opposition and the like. But big impact, I think you need to play a number of games. So it's one of these players who kind of sits in the fringes, who I'm predicting will come in to the team at times and do a really, really good job. I'm going to give highly commended to the Jakub Kiwior, and it's kind of a lazy pick, I will admit that, because I think he's done this job in the past 2 seasons. He's come in at certain times when we've really needed some backups and defensive solidity. Last season's a great example. Gabriel goes down and in comes Jakub Kiwior, steps up for those big, big ties and plays really, really well. Deals with the Real Madrid attack, deals with that tie superbly, especially all the talk around him in that tie. So yeah, it's a bit of a lazy pick because it's basically what he's done in the past 2 seasons. He's broken out. He's not been a first-team regular, but made a big impact from that kind of squad player position. However, there is one player who I just have to give this to. Having watched him in pre-season, I am suddenly so excited about Ethan Nwaneri. That kid looks so sharp. We've all been talking about Max. This will go down as the pre-season that Max Dowman broke out, and it will go down as the moment that we first saw him, and you know, whatever his career ends up being, this will be the pre-season that we look back on. But Ethan Nwaneri had that last season. You know, we saw him in the preseason, and then we saw him, you know, really discover himself. But he said, since signing his new contract, he has said, I see this as my first proper season. And I do as well. Last year, he wasn't really intended to play as much football as he did, I don't think. Obviously, the injuries to Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, they made a difference. That's why Ethan got a lot of game time last year and scored, I think it was 9 goals in the end. So look, he was an important part last year, but I think he will break out this season. I think we'll see a lot more of him in the 8, as we've seen through pre-season. That's definitely something Arteta's looking to do. And for me, Ethan looked physically different. He looked mentally different. He looked so confident. And one thing that I think you can say is physically last season, he did go missing in some games. He was a bit, I hesitate to say lightweight, but he's a kid, right? You know, we think Max Dowman's a kid, and we look at him playing, so we almost like upgrade Ethan Nwaneri to like the old man of the group. He was 17 last season, 18 now. So I think he is going to be the breakout player, and I think, you know, what's the big impact he's going to make? I think he's going to be the player who scores the most goals from midfield. You know, not exclude the wingers from that, because I consider them like forwards, inside forwards. I think Ethan Nwaneri will score more goals than Martin Odegaard and Declan Rice and Mikel Merino from that midfield spot. I really do. Just even not playing as many games, I think that's his game. His game is to drive at the defence and try and win a free kick, lay the ball off to another player, get someone in behind, or shoot. Take a great shot, and he's got a great shot. So I think that is why he will be the breakout player and have a really big impact. Okay, let's do top goal scorer, and then I'm going to go for a little break. There's an obvious one. Right, Victor Gyökeres, we're all looking at him to go and score 20, 30 goals this season. I don't think he's going to be top goal scorer. And there's a very simple reason. I'll come to that in a second. Let's talk first about Kai Havertz. I think he will come third in the top goal scorer race, because for me, he looks like a man on a mission. A man to prove that actually he earned that number 9 spot at Arsenal. When Gabriel Jesus went down, he carved that out as his niche, and he went, I can play this role. And I think he did it for a season and a half really, really well. If he hadn't got injured last season, who knows what that season could have looked like. I think it would have been one of his best seasons ever. Leverkusen, Chelsea, Arsenal, forget about it. I think that would have been his best season ever. The way he was playing, some of the form he was in, I was so impressed. And obviously when he went down, I was gutted. And I think that was the injury that really killed us. That ended any hope. So, you know, I'm going to put him third because I think he's a man on a mission. I don't think he'll play as much this year as he did last year, which is probably a good thing for him. He played minutes on minutes on minutes. So that's a good thing. I think he will still score in the starts that he gets and coming off the bench. I think he will score a ton of goals because he looks ready to do it and determined. And you know what? With goal scorers, sometimes that's the thing. Sometimes the intent and the determination and the will to win is the thing that gets them over the line. You know, you look at players like Didier Drogba in the past. I'm even going to say, you know, Thierry Henry. Both of those players, their first thought was, how can I score? How can I get a shot off? How can I do my job for the team? And I can just see that coming through in Kai Havertz. I'm not saying he's as good as those players. Of course I'm not. But I'm saying he looks like he's got that intent. And I think that's really exciting. Someone who definitely has that intent is Victor Gyökeres. I put him second in this top goal scorer list simply because I think he is going to score loads of goals and get loads of game time. I really do. Obviously, he's the big signing. He's the big summer signing. That is not a revolutionary take, but I do think he will be outpegged by Bukayo Saka. Bukayo Saka last season looked so good. So good. He's got a couple of goals in pre-season as well. And I just wonder if we're sort of looking around, right? At the moment, and we're looking at Declan Rice, we're looking at Victor Gyökeres, we're looking at Martin Odegaard, William Saliba, and we're kind of going, who's going to get us over the line? Who's going to be the person to lead us through this bit? And we're looking at those players that we're thinking, especially, you know, Rice, Odegaard, Saliba, you guys are like captains, but there is Bukayo Saka as well. And I think he's ready to step up. I think this is the year that he doesn't have his Mo Salah year, in the sense that his numbers are going to be the same. but I think he was setting himself up for that last season. He was setting himself up for, I think, assist records and, really flying out the blocks, and that's what he did last year. And I think he was setting himself up to go almost nuclear on his numbers. I think this year, having been injured last year, had some time to really reset mentally and go again, I think he's going to be electric. And I can't see anyone else outperforming him in this Arsenal team. And for that reason, I think his goal scoring numbers will go up as well. His assist numbers will obviously go up with Gyökeres being in there, but I think he is going to be a man on a mission, desperate to get all the goals this season. Okay, I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, flop of the year, not a fun one to do, unexpected success, and player of the year. Don't go anywhere. Sorry for interrupting everyone, but I am on a mission and I need your help. I'm trying to get Arsenal Unfiltered into the ears of as many people as possible, and the best way that you can help me do that is by going and leaving a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts at. That really, really helps me grow the podcast and allows more people to hear the Arsenal Unfiltered coverage 3 times a week. So if you would be so kind to go and leave a review wherever you get your podcast from, I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Welcome back to this episode of Arsenal Unfiltered. In the first half, I did the best new signing, the breakout player, and the top goal scorer predictions for the 25-26 season. Now that we are back from that small break where it just kind of gathered my thoughts, gathered my breath back, we are going to do flop of the year, unexpected success, and player of the year as well. So, flop of the year. I don't want to kind of be too harsh here, but this is just a player that I think has a chance of falling below expectations. I really don't want to be right on any of these. I don't want anyone to fall below our expectations, and I really hope that I'm wrong. I really hope that this is a really good year for these two players who I've predicted to fall below our expectations. And but I just have this feeling. That we might be a little bit, I'm going to say underwhelmed. Underwhelmed's a good way of putting it. Of course, the player that we've said this about for 2 years now and is in my commended spot. Commended feels like the wrong word, actually. But, my second place spot for this award of flop of the year, falling below the expectations, is Martinelli. I wanted him to have a great preseason, and I don't think he has. There's been signs. The assist against Athletic was really good to see. Bursting in behind, responding to that ball over the top. A clever assist for Bukayo Saka. His pace is still there. He is still a really useful player for his pace, for his ability to run players back, towards their own goal. People don't want to commit to him. One, because they know if they slow him down, he'll probably be an easier job for him. But two, they also know that he can skin them and get past them if he gets up to full speed. I just think Martinelli, he hasn't got the goals in pre-season. He hasn't looked like a player who has got over some of those issues that we've seen, and the slow decision making, the kind of really delayed way that he takes on men at the moment is very frustrating. And look, he's a player who is a victim of systems, because we are a team that's set up to dominate the ball, dominate territory, dominate the field tilt, all of that sort of stuff. And he needs space to run into. And he faces low blocks all the time. And because he doesn't have that space, doesn't find that space whilst playing for Arsenal, I think his output is dropped. If we sold Martinelli and he went to another team, I think everyone would go, why have Arsenal done that in like a year's time? Because I think he'll go to other teams, potentially not like the Manchester Cities of this world who play similar game models. But if he went to, say, I'd even maybe throw Liverpool in it. If he went to a Newcastle, a team like that, he'd score a bagful, because those teams set up to get more space. They play quicker. They don't play in such a methodical way as Arsenal and Manchester City do. And I think when he gets space, he's a really dangerous player. But for us, he is a victim of our system. And I think he will continue to fall below our expectations because of that, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong. I hope the more direct style we've got with Victor Gyökeres helps unlock Martinelli. And look, we saw Martinelli at his best when he dovetailed with Gabriel Jesus in that early 2022-23 season. He was going in and around Jesus. Jesus was peeling out to the left. Gyökeres likes to do that exact same action. Maybe it will unlock Martinelli. I just think it may be. We're too far gone on this problem. unfortunately. I feel really bad saying that. However, my flop of the year, the player who I think is winning this award and falling below our expectations, I think is a big shock. And when I thought of this last night, I thought that might ruffle some feathers. But I'm going to say David Raya. And that's not because I think he's going to play badly. I think he's going to have another excellent season. I actually think with Kepa behind him, he will have an opportunity to rest at times, to refocus, to come out for games. He played a lot of football. I think he only missed 2 or 3 games last year. We played Jack Porter for one. We played Neto for one. And maybe Tommy Setford, I'm not 100% certain, got a game in the League Cup. But either way, Raya played a huge amount of football. And we saw losses of focus towards the end of the season, probably due to mental fatigue, because he'd played so much football. However, that being said, I think he's going to have a really good season. But I think his performances last year were so good. Like the double saves early in the season, the penalty saves against Atalanta, the reaction save against Aston Villa, some of his ability to drift into left centre-back and play the ball around and pass. I think he set such a high bar last year. I think our expectations are massive for him. And I just wonder, can he do that again? It was a season for David Raya, probably like none he's ever had. I don't think a keeper has, for Arsenal at least, had a season like that for a very, very long time. And you've got to say, if we set our expectations that high for him again, the chances are he's not going to make those double saves as regularly as he did, So we're going to need to be a little bit better in defence. And I think David Raya, set such a high bar that he might just fall below it this season. Not to say he's having a bad season, but I just think it's an interesting thing that we need to think about and consider. We can't be asking him to bail us out of every game, We did that a lot in the early stages of last season. We're going to have to be more defensively sound, more intelligent this season, because we can't rely on him in the way that we relied on him last season. Okay, unexpected success. So this is someone, the exact opposite, who performs above our expectations. And I've got joint winners for this. I'm going to give it to Ricardo Calafiori and Ben White. And I think because of their fitness concerns, our expectations for these guys is just to play games, stay fit, get some minutes. And I think we all look at Timber and Lewis Skelly as the de facto first choices now. But I don't think these players are in the same mindset as the fans who've watched a lot of Timber and a lot of MLS last season. Ben White and Ricardo Calafiori are hugely important attacking options for us, and I think we will see both of them going around the side of their wingers at multiple times this season. And I think, interestingly, where Timber is a little less aggressive and Miles Lewis-Skelly is aggressive but in a different way, towards the centre of the pitch, I think this, with Ricardo Calafiori and Ben White, is a tool that Mikel Arteta has probably wanted to play for a long time but not had the fitness or the availability to do that. Staring down this season now, Calafiori had a wobble in pre-season, but he's back and it seemed all right in the Athletic Club game. Ben White has obviously had a huge amount of football in pre-season, which will set him up really, really well. We know how good both of them are going forward. We know how dangerous and athletic they can be. I think they are the two that we kind of maybe have an expectation of. They'll rotate in and out and, we'll get some good games from them. I think they could both score a couple of goals. They could both get a hatful of assists. I wouldn't be surprised if they are above 5 goals and assists for this season, which would be a really good contribution from a fullback. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them being a really different way that we attack with both fullbacks overlapping. I think that's a very, very, very exciting option for us. And Ricardo Calafiori is a player I've spoken about a lot on this podcast, of someone who I think has huge talent and potential. And if he stays fit, he's going to be unbelievable. Okay, final one before I bring this to a close. Player of the year. Look, I think I've already mentioned him in this podcast, so let's do the commended first. And I think there are 2 players in this camp who they just show up for us all the time, and I can't see anything but them continuing to show up for us in William Saliba and Declan Rice. There was a particular moment in the Athletic Club game where Declan Rice took a corner, and Athletic looked like they were going to break down down their right wing, our left hand side. Declan Rice chewed up the ground like the other player wasn't even there, swept the ball up and gave it back to David Raya, and a situation that was potentially 2-on-1. Potentially a really good opportunity for Athletic Club to get a counter on us. He ate up the ground, won the ball back, barely even broke a sweat by the looks of things, and played it back to David Raya. It was a wonderful moment and a real good reminder of how good and how physically dominant he is. I think he's taken a lot of unnecessary slack over the summer. Like, I heard a lot of people be like, Declan Rice isn't really an 8, he should be playing 6, but now we've brought Martin Zubimendi, we need a more attacking left 8. And I just think you're missing the point. You're missing the point of that position if that's your take. Yeah, we might like, 15 more goals from that position. But actually, Martin Odegaard didn't score enough last year. Gabriel Martinelli didn't score enough last year. You could even say Leandro Trossard didn't score enough last year. Those players are what we should be looking to first, because you take Declan Rice out of your team at your peril. And we've seen it this pre-season when he hasn't played. We're so easy to run through. And I hope Martin Zubimendi stops a little bit of that. I hope Mikel Merino can add some of that to his game, but ultimately Declan Rice will be the player who stops our midfield getting run through, getting counted on. And the fact that he scored 9 goals last year as well is a big bonus to that. If he gets in double figures next year, I think that would be a massive, massive achievement. If we went and brought Eze and played him left 8 and he got 10 goals, I'd say he's fine. That's a good job. So I really don't understand some of the slack that Declan Rice has got. William Saliba is another player who's had a wonderful pre-season, looks back to his best, similar to David Raya. Last season, just played too much football, looked towards the end like he was losing focus, losing sharpness, and I just think we played him too much. That's the end of that story. We played him too much, but he's had a superb preseason. He was with the early training camp in La Manga, looks really, really good. I think he's going to be really high on this list, and he probably would get my Player of the Year prediction if we didn't have Bukayo Saka. I've already mentioned him. I think he's going to be top goal scorer. I think he will have the season that last year looked like it was promising. Last year looked like it was promising, a season unlike any we've seen from him yet. And we've seen some good stuff, right? I think he will complete that this year. And I think we forget how good he was before the injury. Last year was dominated by discourse of injuries and problems. And, first it was the Martin Odegaard injury. Then it was our cluster injuries at fullback. Then it was the cluster injuries up top. That was our discourse last year. And I think we forget how well Bukayo Saka started. He really was on course for a sensational season, and that's why I've given him the top goal scorer prediction. That's why I've given him the Player of the Year prediction, because I don't think he will get the injury that he got. I think we've got enough players now. Ethan can play out there. Madueke can play out there. We can rest him. He doesn't need 20 minutes against Preston and all of that sort of jazz that he ended up getting last season. He will get rests now. We finally have the backup, I think, on that side. In 2 players, you could argue 3 if you're going to throw Max Dowman in there. He will get that rest, and I think he will therefore complete what was set up for him last season. I just think his efficiency and everything we know about him as Arsenal fans that people still somehow doubt, I think he will prove everyone wrong this year and go on and be our Player of the Year. Some team predictions. I think we'll score plenty of goals. I think we'll score 90 plus. I don't think that will be an issue. I really think the changes that we've made and the ability that we have got in the team now by adding Gyökeres and adding Noni Madueke is really, really important. The depth we've got means Kai Havertz, means Bukayo Saka can stay fit. We might still have another player coming in as well, so that adds to it. So I think we'll go 90 plus goals. I hesitate to predict whether we will win the Premier League or win the Champions League, because those things are on the knife edge. But one thing I think we will see is I think we'll take the cups a little bit more seriously. I think there will be a recognition that we need something, okay? And last year we did really well in the League Cup and just came across our bogey team in Newcastle. I don't think there are many teams that I look at and think, yeah, we're going to have a problem playing in individual games against them now. Usually it's Newcastle that I always look at, but do you think Liverpool? I don't think they're going to look as defensively good as they have done in previous years. So I think that there's a real option, whilst I am a little bit terrified of their attack, there is a real option to hit them with a lot of punches and, fight fire with fire from our side of things. Manchester City, I'm not sure. I believe their window has been really great. Their last 2 windows feel, I don't know, really, really poor in my view. We'll see what Shirky and Reinders do. I don't know too much about Reinders as a player. I know Shirky is a very good player. Whether he's a Premier League standard player, still yet to be decided. So I don't really fear them. Newcastle, they feel in disarray at the moment. They feel all over the place. Chelsea look really good, but again, I do think there is real big question marks over their defence. I don't look at that defence and go, wow, that's a title-winning defence like I do at ours. And from there just isn't a team that I'm like really fearful of. There are teams that in one-off games, I'm a bit nervous about the start. Because we might not be quite up to speed, but by the time we get to the end of the season, February for the League Cup and end of the season for the FA Cup, I think we will be right there or thereabouts with the very best. So, look, I think there is a cup potentially on the horizon this year, and hopefully a Premier League. I won't predict that one because I don't want to jinx anything, but I do think a cup is something we should look out for. Okay, what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to leave it there. I will be back with a preview of the Manchester United game for this Sunday later in the week. So keep an eye out for that on your podcast platforms. Make sure you follow so you can see that episode pop up, and make sure you leave a review if you feel so inclined to do so, because it really, really helps me get Arsenal Unfiltered into the ears of other Arsenal fans. All that's left to say now, guys, is thank you for following, thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you very, very soon.